Hello everyone. Welcome back to War Historican channel. Today we delve into a chapter of history often overshadowed by the tumultuous events of World War II, the Winter War in Finland. Lasting from November 1939 to March 1940, this conflict between Finland and the Soviet Union holds a unique place in the annals of warfare. In this video, we'll explore the origins, key battles, and the remarkable resilience of the Finnish people against overwhelming odds. Join us as we unravel the intricacies of the Winter War, a tale of courage, endurance, and the indomitable spirit of a nation caught in the grip of icy adversity. Let's jump right in. Background. Until the early 19th century, Finland was the eastern part of the Kingdom of Sweden. From 21 February 1808 to 17 September 1809, the Russian Empire waged the Finnish War against the Kingdom of Sweden, ostensibly to protect the Russian capital, St. Petersburg. Eventually, Russia conquered and annexed Finland and converted it into an autonomous buffer state. The resulting Grand Duchy of Finland enjoyed wide autonomy within Russia until the end of the 19th century, when Russia began attempts to assimilate Finland as part of a general policy to strengthen the central government and unify the empire by Russification. Those attempts were aborted because of Russia's internal strife, but they ruined Russia's relationship with Finland. In addition, support increased in Finland for self-determination movements. World War I led to the collapse of the Russian Empire during the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the Russian Civil War. On 15 November 1917, the Bolshevik Russian government declared that national minorities possessed the right of self-determination, including the right to secede and form a separate state, which gave Finland a window of opportunity. On 6 December 1917, the Senate of Finland declared the nation's independence. Soviet Russia, later the Soviet Union, recognized the new Finnish government just 3 weeks after the declaration. Finland achieved full sovereignty in May 1918, after a 4-month civil war in which the conservative whites defeated the socialist Reds with the help of the Imperial German Army, pro-German Jaegers, and some Swedish troops, in addition to the expulsion of Bolshevik troops. Finland joined the League of Nations in 1920 and sought security guarantees, but Finland's primary goal was cooperation with the Scandinavian countries, mainly Sweden, and it focused on the exchange of information and on defence planning the joint defence of Åland, rather than on military exercises or on the stockpiling and the deployment of material. Nevertheless, Sweden carefully avoided committing itself to Finnish foreign policy. Finland's military policy included clandestine defence cooperation with Estonia. The period after the Finnish Civil War to the early 1930s was a politically unstable time in Finland because of the continued rivalry between the conservatives and the socialists. The Communist Party of Finland was declared illegal in 1931, and the nationalist Lapua movement organised anti-communist violence, which culminated in a failed coup attempt in 1932. The successor of the Lapua movement, the Patriotic People's Movement, had a minor presence in national politics and never had more than 14 seats of the 200 in the Finnish parliament. By the late 1930s, the export-oriented Finnish economy was growing and the nation's extreme political movements had diminished. After Soviet involvement in the Finnish Civil War in 1918, no formal peace treaty was signed. In 1918 and 1919, Finnish volunteers conducted 2 unsuccessful military incursions across the Soviet border, the Vienna and Ornus expeditions, to annex areas in Karelia that, according to the Greater Finland ideology, would combine all Baltic Finnic peoples into a single state. In 1920, Finnish communists based in Soviet Russia attempted to assassinate the former Finnish White Guard commander-in-chief, Marshal Carl Gustaf Emil Mannerheim. On 14 October 1920, Finland and Soviet Russia signed the Treaty of Tartu, confirming the old border between the autonomous Grand Duchy of Finland and Imperial Russia proper as the new Finnish-Soviet border. Finland also received Petsamo province, with its ice-free harbour on the Arctic Ocean. Despite the signing of the treaty, relations between the two countries remained strained. The Finnish government allowed volunteers to cross the border to support the East Karelian uprising in Russia in 1921, and Finnish communists in the Soviet Union continued to prepare for revenge and staged a cross-border raid into Finland, the Pork Mutiny in 1922. In 1932, the Soviet-Finnish Non-Aggression Pact was signed between both countries, and it was reaffirmed for 10 years in 1934. Foreign trade in Finland was booming, but less than one of it was with the Soviet Union. In 1934, the Soviet Union also joined the League of Nations. Justification. Soviet General Secretary Joseph Stalin regarded it a disappointment that the Soviet Union could not halt the Finnish Revolution. He thought that the pro-Finland movement in Karelia posed a direct threat to Leningrad, and that the area and defences of Finland could be used to invade the Soviet Union or restrict fleet movements. The leader of the Finnish Social Democratic Party were targeted for particular scorn. When Stalin gained absolute power through the Great Purge of 1938, the Soviets changed their foreign policy toward Finland and began to pursue the reconquest of the provinces of Tsarist Russia that had been lost during the chaos of the October Revolution of 1917 and the Russian Civil War almost 2 decades earlier. Soviet leaders believed that the old empire's extended borders provided territorial security and wanted Leningrad. Only 32 came from the Finnish border to enjoy a similar level of security against the rising power of Nazi Germany. On 30 November 1939, Soviet forces invaded Finland with 21 divisions, totaling 450,000 men, and bombed Helsinki, killing about 100 citizens and destroying more than 50 buildings. In response to international criticism, Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov stated that the Soviet Air Force was not bombing Finnish cities, but rather dropping things to help to the starving Finnish population. Paasikivi commented that the Soviet attack without a declaration of war violated 3 separate non-aggression pacts. The Treaty of Tartu, which was signed in 1920, the non-aggression pact between Finland and the Soviet Union, which was signed in 1932 and again in 1934, and also the Covenant of the League of Nations, which the Soviet Union signed in 1934. Field Marshal C.G. Mannerheim was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Finnish Defence Forces after the Soviet attack. In a further reshuffling, Aimo Kägender's caretaker cabinet was replaced by Risto Ryti and his cabinet, with Väinö Tanner as foreign minister because of opposition to Kägender's pre-war politics. Finland brought the matter of the Soviet invasion before the League of Nations. The League expelled the Soviet Union on 14 December 1939 and exhorted its members to aid Finland. Finnish national unity against the Soviet invasion was later called the spirit of the Winter War. The Winter War between the Soviet Union and Finland witnessed several notable battles, where the Finnish military, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, demonstrated exceptional tactical prowess and resilience. 2 key battles that highlighted Finland's tenacity and resourcefulness were the Battle of Suomussalmi and the defence of the Mannerheim Line. Battle of Suomussalmi. The Battle of Suomussalmi was a pivotal engagement where Finnish forces, under the command of Colonel Hjalmar Silsvuo, decisively defeated the Soviet 44th Rifle Division. The battle took place in the dense forests of eastern Finland, where the harsh winter conditions and deep snow played to the advantage of the Finnish ski troops. Silsvuo's forces ambushed and encircled the Soviet divisions, cutting off their supply lines and isolating them in the freezing wilderness. The Finns employed guerrilla tactics, utilizing their knowledge of the terrain to outnumber and harass the larger, less mobile Soviet forces. The battle culminated in a significant victory for the Finns, with the destruction of a considerable portion of the Soviet division and the capture of valuable equipment. Defense of the Mannerheim Line. The Mannerheim Line was a defensive fortification along the Karelian Isthmus, constructed by the Finns in anticipation of a Soviet invasion. As the Red Army launched its offensive, the Finns fiercely defended the Mannerheim Line, creating a formidable obstacle for the advancing Soviet troops. The Soviet forces, commanded by Marshal Kliment Voroshilov, faced a daunting task in breaching the well-fortified defensive positions. The Finns used a combination of bunkers, trenches, and anti-tank obstacles to slow down the Soviet advance. The Battle of Summer, one of the key engagements along the Mannerheim Line, witnessed intense fighting as the Finns repelled successive Soviet assaults. Despite the overwhelming numerical superiority of the Soviet forces, the Finns held their ground for an extended period. The Mannerheim Line became a symbol of Finnish determination and military prowess during the Winter War. Ultimately, as the war progressed, the sheer weight of Soviet numbers and resources forced the Finns to cede territory in the subsequent peace treaty. These battles, along with others, showcased the ability of the Finnish military to adapt to the challenging winter conditions, effectively employ guerrilla tactics, and make the most of their limited resources to resist the Soviet invasion during the Winter War. The Winter War between the Soviet Union and Finland, though brief, left an enduring mark on the annals of military history. It was a conflict that highlighted the resilience of a smaller nation facing overwhelming odds as Finland, through determination and strategic ingenuity, managed to thwart the Soviet invasion. The Battle of Suomussalmi and the defence of the Mannerheim line exemplify the Finnish military's ability to adapt to the harsh winter conditions and effectively employ guerrilla tactics against a numerically superior enemy. The Sky Troops' mobility and knowledge of the terrain, coupled with the clever use of defensive fortifications along the Mannerheim line, allowed the Finns to inflict significant casualties on the Red Army. Despite the initial successes and the remarkable defence put up by Finland, the sheer scale of Soviet resources eventually took its toll. The Moscow Peace Treaty of 1940 forced Finland to cede territory, including the strategically significant Karelian Isthmus, to the Soviet Union. However, Finland retained its independence, and the Winter War had profound consequences for the geopolitical landscape. Internationally, the Winter War garnered widespread sympathy for Finland, with many nations expressing admiration for the nation's bravery in the face of aggression. The inability of the League of Nations to prevent the Soviet invasion and the subsequent expulsion of the Soviet Union from the League underscored the limitations of international diplomacy during that tumultuous period. The Winter War became a source of national pride and unity for the Finns, who emerged from the conflict with an enhanced sense of identity and determination. The events of 1939-1940 also played a role in Finland's decision to align itself with Nazi Germany during the continuation war against the Soviet Union, further shaping the nation's complex position in the context of World War II. Thanks for watching.